Sooner or later, we all are going to go through it. If you have taken a human body, just like all of us, we are going to die, and everyday time is ticking. The fact is the greatest or the most prominent factor that is constantly bothering us is the fear of death or the fear of being lonely. But the fact is, in this reality, when you are born alone, and when you die, you will die alone. Let's understand the meaning of death. Let's decode what happens before death, after death, and the process of death. The factors. When we come into a mother's womb, we don't know what happens before the process of birth. Similarly, we are unaware of the process that happens after death. It's a very fascinating thought. Every second, when we see someone dying or we think about that fact lingers, that one day we are going to die. Or we see a loved one dying. The fear is that one day we are going to be there. This thought is always there. But have you ever realized you have never experienced that something that you have never experienced? Why do you have fear about it? Imagine you are in a dark room where there is nothing. The fear will start coming of the unknown, and that unknown is death. But the fact is, you have the fear of death. That means you have experienced death many times. We're just unaware of it. However, one must realize that in Sanatana Dharma, especially in the Garuda Purana, a clear understanding of death is given. The entire process of death is given, and the fact is you never die. What you leave behind is the body, but you are eternal, and that is the Jiva Atman. The Jiva Atman is just a reflection of the Paramatma. You know, as you grow old, how old clothes are not going to fit you. As time passes, the 5 elements, that is the body, will eventually dissolve and merge into the 5 elements again, and you will go on. Life and death are not opposite. In reality, both life and death are opposite. Life always goes on. Once you have that knowledge and you start working on it, you will realize that we are creatures of bliss and we are eternal. Let's understand the process of death given in the Garuda Purana, and also understand that these great rishis and saints were spiritual scientists who had decoded the body at a level which modern science is trying to understand now. If you have seen a dead body, you realize what happens to the dead body. It is very strange. If someone is dying, all of a sudden, you'll see that they're recovering, and you think they're going to be okay, but after a few days, they die. This has been beautifully decoded by the rishis through the knowledge of the Panchavayus. The Panchavayus are the 5 major Vayus that work throughout a body. They determine the state of a body. They determine the lifespan of the body. If we understand, it also determines how and when we are going to die. Generally, when normal people like us die, if you have realized for the 5 hours prior to death, the feet start becoming cold. This indicates that the chakras in the feet are slowly not operating because the prana has started moving, and at the same time, it signifies the detachment from the earth plane. The attachment to this reality is coming to an end, and the person or the loved one next to the dying person realizes that there is no time. Once this process has started, the Panchavayus leave in a very specific manner, and the process is beautiful. See, there is nothing to fear in death. The first Vayu that leaves the body is the Saman Vayu. Within 21 minutes, the Saman Vayu leaves the body. Of course, we'll discuss in detail how the Vayu leaves the body. The second Vayu is the Prana Vayu. In this reality, the fact that you're inhaling and exhaling is through the Prana Vayu, and within 6 to 8 hours, the Prana Vayu leaves the body. During the entire process, the body starts sinking. At times, when you see that the person is dead, all of a sudden, you see fecal matter coming out, urination coming out, or some mucus from the mouth coming out. These are the Vayus leaving the body. The Udana Vayu leaves the body at a very specific time, which is approximately 12 to 18 hours. Different texts say different things, but once the Udana Vayu has left the body, there is no hope of coming back. The person is officially dead, but the process will go on. The Apana and the Vyana Vayu leave the body at the gap of 18 hours, and the last Vayu, the Vyana Vayu, will also stay for 14 days. That means the body will decompose for 14 days. That is the reason in Sanatana Dharma, the first thing that we do within 4 hours is burn the body, so that there is complete detachment and that Atman is taken to higher lokas. Let's understand spiritually what happens to the body. Have you realized when a baby comes from the mother's womb in this reality, the first thing that the doctor will do is cut the umbilical cord. Similarly, at the time of death, Mother Nature will cut the astral cord. According to yogic science and Sanatana Dharma, there are three bodies: the physical body, the astral body, and the causal body. When we die, we leave the physical body behind. That is, the Pancha Mahabhutas, and we take the astral and the causal body with us. You know, it is very amazing and very scientific, and now we talk about it in Akashic records and astral travel. It is said that there is an astral cord that goes from the navel through everywhere. It is a fine line that is shining. It can never be cut, and that is when spiritual experiences happen. But at the time of death, the cord is cut, and the Atman is free from the Pancha Mahabhutas. Now let's understand what happens when we see a dead body. It is very strange because we, at this level of awareness, don't understand what is happening. When a person dies and the astral cord is cut, the Atman keeps hovering around for 11 days. And you know, that is the time in Sanatana Dharma. It is said that the close family members standing around should pray, chant the Mrityunjaya mantra, or read the Bhagavad Gita, because at that time the Atman is aware. Now you'll ask me, how is the Atman aware? You know what happens? A small portion of the mind holding the vasanas and samskaras goes with it, and the Atman is aware. In fact, the Atman is trying to communicate with us, but we are not at that state of consciousness. It is trying to reach out for help. That is the reason, again I repeat, when the body is burnt, that Atman realizes that there is no attachment, and it's pulled into higher states. But before going there, we should understand one question. How is it associated with the body? Now, there's a very beautiful question asked by Arjuna to Bhagwan, that is Lord Krishna. If I have done my spiritual growth and I don't get enlightened in this body, what will happen next? Let me put it in the concept and understanding of Tantra and chakras. Imagine that you have done a lot of spiritual practices, but you have not reached the pinnacle of human consciousness. That is the crown. What will happen to you? Or a man who has lived a normal life? How will he die? And how does karma come into play at the time of death? You know, Sanatana Dharma says that we are responsible for our own life and our own karma. If you are leading a life that is full of adharma, full of cheating, full of manipulation, Mother Nature is not going to let you go. Depending upon the quality of life that you're leading, you will leave this body. Again, coming back to the understanding of Tantra, if you're leading a life that is very shallow, you will leave the body from the lower chakras. Once you leave the body from the lower chakras, that will determine your next birth, and you may be born again into a lower reincarnation. However, if you're leading a very dharmic life, full of dharma, full of knowledge, and full of evolution, you may leave the body from the higher chakras. It is said if you leave the body from the heart or the higher chakras, there is a possibility that you may get a human birth. And if you are a very evolved being and you don't reach moksha, you may be born in the family of rishis or yogis so that you can continue your journey again. But how do you leave? Let's understand. Have you seen the human body? It is the most complex instrument, even more complex than going to the moon or understanding how the world operates. Because the world is inside you, and at the time of death, we leave the body from the 9 orifices. That is 2 eyes, the 2 nose holes, 2 ears, your mouth, reproductive organs, and of course your anus. So, depending upon the life that you're leading, you leave the body. I don't know if you're aware or not, but in Sanatana Dharma, when the body is dead, the first thing that is done is we tie the toes, we put tulsi and Ganga water in the mouth, we cover the mouth, cover the ear holes, eye holes, and everything so that the prana leaves from the crown. But as I mentioned earlier, depending upon the quality of life, you determine your own death and your next birth, and that is reincarnation. However, when a yogi leaves a body who's beyond attachment, who's beyond karma, they leave the body from the crown. It is a very rare sight to see because when a yogi leaves the body, they sit in Padmasana, they pull the prana to the 3rd eye, and then they take it to the crown. It is said at that time when they leave this mortal world, the skull cracks and a few spots of blood are seen, and that is the end of the vicious cycle of birth and death. However, when people like us die, depending upon our merits or demerits, Mother Nature will see to it that we'll come back to pay again what we deserve. So, there is no God that is punishing you. It is your own action. Be responsible. As the process of death starts and the Atma becomes free from the mortal coils of the Panchama Buddhas, when the astral cord is cut for 11 days, the Atman will hover around. It will go to the things it is most attached to, like its family. If it is attached to money, it will go to the bank. If it's loved ones, that is the reason very close members of that family experience the presence of their loved ones. They are actually communicating. But if you do some spiritual sadhana, if you're doing your mantra jap, and you have your Ishta or your Guru, it is said that at the time of death, that Ishta, that Guru, will be holding you, looking after you, and will be taking you to the higher states of consciousness. That is the reason no spiritual sadhana will ever go to waste. At the right time, in the right space, your sadhana will help you. After the body has been cremated, Mother Nature is very, very powerful. It has its own laws. We have the gravitational force which is pulling us down. At the same time, we have a magnetic force which is pulling us up. The Atman is pulled into different lokas or states of consciousness, depending upon the karma. There is a cooling period where it goes through. At this point in time, there is no space, time, or causation because the factor of the mind is not there. Only the vasana and the samskaras, whatever you have accumulated in this life, will be taken to the next life. There is a karmic board where the blueprint of your next life is created. All the good actions, all the bad actions, whatever you have done, are printed, and then when the time is right, you are pushed into this reality again, just to work your karma out. It is said when a baby is born, in the first 40 days, the baby is completely aware and has impressions of the past birth. That is the reason you see them at times laughing or giggling, or even going through certain kinds of emotions. This is how nature works. If you are aware, you can end the vicious cycle of birth and death, or you can go on and on until you realize that you are Satchitananda.